Hi, so I'm Sébastien Foucault. I'm the Chief Data Officer at HRS, and it's really my pleasure to be here and contribute to the Data Festival this year again. I was there last year, and this is really an event that I like to attend. It's a bit different this year because I'm speaking to my screen directly, but I know that we have the opportunity to interact a bit more after this session doing a Q&A. So as I said, I'm the Chief Data Officer at HRS. I have a long-standing background in analytics. I'm a data scientist myself. And what I've been doing over the past few years is really helping companies like HRS to scale up their data functions and to achieve the business goals that the company wants to reach thanks to this data organization. So how I can integrate better data into the ecosystem of the company itself to overachieve. That's what the goal is, to overachieve the goals that the company has on the business side. So I want to walk through today a couple of, let's say, recipes that I've been aggregating in the past few years and some of my thoughts of how we can achieve that to the best. It's a talk that's mostly addressed to an audience of people that are heading departments or people that are not involved yet into data analytics in the management side. Yes, so let's just go on. So let's just share my screen and let's go. Right, so how to scale data function in a fast-growing organization. So we'll start briefly to introduce what HRS is doing. So HRS is the market leader in corporate traveling. So the vision is really to provide the premier lodging experience to our corporations that we collaborate with globally. And also in this means to help support organizations to achieve their targets and make their travelers' life improving. We work in many different markets, most worldwide, and we are working with around 1,200 hotel experts within HRS or employees. We have more than 3,000 customers, close to 6,000 in reality, in more than 30,000 different destinations, and we collaborate with more than 800,000 hotels, right? So we are basically representing our corporates throughout the hotels. So we do that through different products that are connected to each other. So the first one is really the procurement side, we call sourcing, which is essentially optimizing the portfolio of hotels for a given corporate and negotiating the best rates or the best upgrades of these hotels in these destinations. The second part is around search and book. So through third party or directly through our portals where we provide the ability for the travelers to select the hotel. And finally, we also have integrated a full payment function here where we can essentially take in charge or outsource entirely the payment part that the traveler will have. So for a traveler, it's a complete seamless experience where they just go to the hotel, check in, check out, but don't have any to process expenses or pay the hotel directly. And from a data perspective, obviously, those three products are very much intricated, and this is really where data plays its role, collecting information from the travelers in the search booking, for instance, optimizing it through a recommendation engine, but also collecting information at the payment point of view to understand better what the travelers are doing, and all this can be used back to the optimization process that we have for sourcing. So we have basically an end-to-end view here of the traveler experience, and we use that to understand better how to negotiate which hotels, which destinations make more sense for a corporate, and at the end provide savings to our corporations, but also a better traveler experience altogether. So that's what we do, and as you see, data is really at the core of what HRS is doing. But like any company, HRS has been in so of troubles, and recently it's been even worse. I can't hide that working in traveling industry in the past 3 months has been a very tough ride because, as you know, COVID-19 has been impacting worldwide with the industries, but travel is probably and hospitality is probably where let's say the lockdown has been hitting the worst. And I've seen that firsthand when we were looking on daily numbers, where back in March or February, Starting in December with China, but March and February, we saw the whole world locked down, and then suddenly all the traffic and all the bookings on our platform just going down to zero. And I think this is where actually what I'm going to develop a bit further about building up self-contained, resilient teams helped us tremendously. So the first reaction has been to not panic, understand what's happening and how we can basically analyze the facts based on data and react on it. To adapt the business model to make sure that we can control better our costs in one hand, but also be able to provide a better services and better businesses to our corporates. But also the way you organize the team to be more resilient to those type of crises, where suddenly you have to remote, suddenly you have to work part-time, etc., etc. So essentially what we're doing with our data at HRS is like every other company, is first provide transparency and objectivity to our stakeholders internally, but also to our customers. That is made to make a decision, business-wide decisions. And for that, we need to make sure that people trust the data that we provide. And also we use this data for all the optimization processes that we have on the product side. So in one hand, there's the analytics part, but on the other hand, there's all the machine learning and product part of the usage of data. So this is something that you probably know already. I'll go very briefly on that, but this is very important to understand those different, let's say, stages of using of analytics, from a descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive. Each company doesn't have to do all of those at the same time. You don't need, there are no prerequisites to do one after the other. But what I see in companies is like the size of HRS, all of this needs to be tackled at some point. So the most important part is actually descriptive, which is traditional business intelligence, because this is really where the main part of the decision is still coming from. So you need to make sure that you have a proper system of descriptive analytics. Then you want to assemble in the business, but also in your central or in your analytics team, people that are able to analyze and understand what happened in the past. So descriptive is really looking backwards. And you need to deep dive into the data to have a diagnostic, understand what happens, that you can really take some decisions. The next step is obviously being able to use this information through modeling, statistic modeling, for instance, statistical modeling, to forecast what's going to happen, to have a view of the future, again, to facilitate decision-making processes. And the grail, let's say, for people like me, is really basically the product side. So how we can move into prescriptive analytics, where we use the models to take automatically decisions through products. Right? So all those stages are important. All are more, obviously descriptive analytics is more complex, but also reap off the best business values. But I don't want to, I want to make sure that people understand that there's no hierarchy here. All of those are important. So the way to do that is first through data democratizations. You cannot just rely on the core, small team of people that gather all the knowledge around data. You want to make sure that everyone in the company can use data to the different levels. And for that, you have some prerequisites. You need to first make sure that you have a good quality control of your data, make sure that this is what the data can be used by the business side. You need to have governance processes, I'll come back on that in a minute, to make sure that data is flowing seamlessly in your company. But at the end, it's all about the ownership and the enablement. And the essential message here is that you cannot expect your data teams to be the owner of data. They're owner of the framework, but at the end, the owner of the data are in the business or in the product teams, because they produce and consume this data. And the other very important point is the enablement part, is that you want to provide to your organization tools that they can use to consume data or produce data on their own, independently of your data teams. So the product is essential. We need to enable our customers through integrated data products. The product mindset, everything that we've learned around software development and product development over the past years needs to apply as well for data. And reciprocally, you need to integrate more and more into data into your product development to move towards machine learning at all stages. So there's a proximity that needs to develop further between product software development and data that is very, very critical as well. So the main problem, and you have seen that quote of myself on the social media in the past, I'm sure. For me, the most important part is really the culture. So the technology, the talent are things that we can solve. They're important. I'm going to dive into that in a minute. But we need to, what we need to do with data, the change management and to bring in that organization is the intersections between the right technological development, which is for me the easiest part. You need to have the right people for that, so the talents, hiring the right talents. But the hardest part is actually being able to bring inside the organizations the right mindset, the right culture overall to be able to use data. If you have technology in place with the right people, but you're not enable the entire organization to use the data, you fail. And that's the hardest part, the cultural management and the cultural change that you need to bring. So on the technological side, you have also to remember that if you want to bring machine learning and data science into your product, it's overall a complex problem. And that relates very little on the algorithmic. And that's always the sad side for people like me that are coming very much from the data science and the modeling side of this world, is that it's just a tiny fraction of the entire ecosystem that you need to put in place to leverage machine learning and data into your products. So here, this is a map. It's inspired from a paper from Google from a few years back. But essentially, you need in one hand to be able to have the right infrastructure in architecture, streaming your data, but also enabling the software development to use the data properly. You need to have the process and resources management in place. You need to have data pre-processing, data collection and management schema in place. You need to make sure that you have a good quality control of your data and verification. You want to, every single point to be able to run analytics and monitor what's happening. Something that happens a lot in machine learning is, of course, the feature extraction and feature engineering that needs to be actually made at the company level and not just at the model level with, for instance, feature banks. And finally, everything that is around testing, offline or online with A/B testing, for instance. So all this ecosystem needs to be in place from a technological standpoint, not only having the machine learning expert there working on their models. It needs to be integrated completely with software development and product development. And from a pure data side, let's say it's a very oversimplification on an architecture, but you cannot avoid to have the two streams of work. So you have your data that will be stored in some sort of data lakes or some form, but you always will need to have two branches. One branch, which is basically through the classical ETLs and data warehousing business intelligence stream, where you want to have there your curated source of truth, golden standards data. So it's all a matter of structuration and curation of the information, because this is where 80% of the business use cases are going to be living in your data warehouse. Also, it just literally represents 20% of the data that you have. It's very important that you have that stream in place, because a lot of decisions of the businesses are going to come from there. On the other hand, at the bottom line, you also need to stream data more, because what you want is that your analyst to be able to access immediately to a new data source, to be able to immediately reap off the benefit from it and being able to deep dive. You need far more flexibility and less curated standards to be able to bring value very fast. The same goes around machine learning. Machine learning doesn't care of structured data most of the time. You can deal with a bit more unstructured data. So it's not a matter of curate the quality, it's a matter of curation, right? You don't need to curate the data. So you need to develop in your organization those two streams of technology that you are enable the entire span that I described in these different steps of analytics before. So obviously the second point is around culture. I mentioned that several times. As you know, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And the key, and if you have one thing to remember of that talk, is that data is owned by the business, not by the data function. This is an essential message you need to convey in your organization. Because at the end, as a data function, you're in full control of the framework. You're in the full control of the infrastructure, of the architecture, and how the data is used. You may even be in control of the quality of measurement of the data, but you're not producing the data for the main part. And usually you're not consuming it yourself. It's usually provided as a service for your stakeholders or serving as part of a machine learning part of a given product. So the data, if you have a data function, they just cannot be owning the data. And that's something that you need to change in the mindset of the culture. And to do that properly, you need to set up a governance system, right? So you need to define clearly the ownerships around who owns which part of the data, what is the responsibilities, and enable the process. And of course, use the technology there, metadata management and curation, making sure that you have collaborative ways of exchanging around data. I mean, the curation part is actually at the intersections between the business, the product, and the data, and it needs to be a collaborative way. You have to create a tooling around that. But governance is essential, because if you want to democratize data access, you need to have the right processes in place to understand how to stream the data. And data quality is key, obviously. And again, your business people have to be responsible of the data quality, because they know what they want to do with it. You don't know as a data function. The same goes for the data that is produced. When you have a new source of data that's connected, it's connected for a purpose that is driven usually by product and business, not by data. So you need to understand what is the quality measurement that needs to be addressed to feed the data into your data lakes. And that only the people who produce the data with a given purpose in mind don't understand which quality we need to have. And I hear all the time that we have all the data that we need. Yes, we may be surrounded by data. You can be surrounded by water and dying of thirst, right? You're in a raft in the middle of the ocean, you have water everywhere that you can see, but you cannot drink it. And a lot of this analogy applies with data, where it's not because you have a lot of data that you can use it. Data is collected for a purpose, curated, quality assessed for a given purpose. And that's very important for your business stakeholders to understand. And correlated to that is, for me, important to fight data cluttering, right? It's not because you have a lot of data, but you don't also have to collect data at all costs, just because in case you may use it for the exact same reason. If you collect data, but you don't know what you're going to use for, you will collect the wrong way. And when the use case occurs, very rarely the case that you have already the data that fits the use cases, right? So you just want to make sure that you reduce your data flow to what you need. And also you want to monitor. You don't want the data flow to dry out, but still fight monitoring is important. And around data, the same principles that we have in agile, lean development, software development, and needs to apply, right? So you want for your data development, for your data collections, to go for iterative processes and hypothesis processes. So you want to have an hypothesis of what you want to achieve, which data you want to get, how you want to solve the problem, experiment, measure, to collect more data, and then iterate. And this applies throughout anything you should do in any organizations. So I will take the last few minutes to talk about the talent side. So I think there have been a lot of confusions for me and for other people, I guess, of what is a data scientist, right? It's been coined back in 2012, and if I look at LinkedIn today, everyone is a data scientist, which is good, that's nice, but at the end that doesn't help organizations to structure themselves. So it's important to define roles in your organizations according to the needs that you have, and you can just use a different nomenclature. This is the one we're using at HR. So we have data scientists, which is essentially the people that are responsible of model development and analytics, also deep dive analytics, so more towards the business. Then we have the analysts that are really responsible of the analytics and the reporting side, again, more towards the business. And then on the other hand of the spectrum, business software development, we have the engineers. So in one hand, the machine learning engineers that are really at the intersection between data science, but really working on putting in production at scale models, so developing models for them to be in production at scale. And the data engineers that are more working on the structure, on infrastructure, and the pipelines to make sure that we can stream the information or towards our ETLs for the reporting line or towards more the machine learning side. So this is the cornerstones of our organizations to have those different profiles. Of course, not everyone fits in the box. Nothing is black and white, but that's essentially the type of role that we have set up at HRS to organize ourselves. As I said, data is just part of the entire organization, right? So we need to make sure also that we are included as data function inside the org. And what we need also to achieve is to build performant teams around. And a performant team is not like we see on the left-hand side, like everyone is in the box and single-handedly a given task. No, performant team is end-to-end. It's like a Formula One team, right? We always look at the driver, but at the end, without all those people surrounding the car, there's no races that is won. And in these cases, everyone is T-shaped. Everyone understands what's happening around it, but is very specialized in what he's doing. And want to achieve the same in any organization, and data is part of it. So we have seen cross-functional team existing for a while in the Scrum and Agile ways in software development, where we have this intersection between product and software development. We need to incorporate the rest of the organization into the same pool of talents, right? So what we are doing now at HRS is creating cross-functional teams that goes from product onto data engineering, where we have front-end, back-end, data scientists, machine learning engineers, and data engineering working as one team to develop a product that is machine learning based. So that's important because then you spread the responsibility and ownership within the group. All right, you minimize needs for requirements meetings, and basically your team can focus end-to-end and test the process end-to-end. So they can really build a product and go for MVP and to the final product that you are. So it's really following the agility principle, and that needs to include that. So for that, you need to get the right people, right? And hiring is one stream, a very hot market around data for years now. It's really actually difficult to hire. But as I said before, the culture is the very important essential point. Skills can be ramped up, so never overlook the upskill part. You can train a backend engineer to become a data engineer. You need really to work out creating via boot camps or training streams the people that are in your in-house already into the next level of skill set that they want, which is in data, machine learning, or data engineering, data analytics or data engineering. Also, as I have a background as an academic in the university, I always wanted to keep this partnership with university ongoing. So first, because they can help you and support you in this upskills program, for instance, but also as a career development program, but also because they are a good pool of new, fresh joiners for your company, people that just graduated, and then you can brew them inside these roles at the company. So again, if you bring someone fresh, build up their cultural adaptations, let's say, to your environment, and then skill them up, that's maybe sometimes easier than just to hire someone from outside. Think long term. So finally, this is more or less the final slide here. What I want to talk about briefly now is how to structure this. I've been talking about data function, and what do I mean by that? So with years passing, I've realized that there's no perfect solution, and each of them needs to be adapted to the company. But what is clear to me more and more is that we need to spread the knowledge around that as much as possible within the organization. So decentralize as much as possible. Bring your data scientists, your data engineers, your data analysts within the team where they will, or the business units where they will bring direct value. On the other hand, you want to make sure that you maintain the coherence, the cohesions between the different elements that you have in your organization. So for that, you still need a central structure that supports all the rest, in particular, for instance, for the data platform development, but also making sure that you have the right guidelines and convention spread across the organization, and development of new skill sets that are brought into the organization. So make sure that you have what is done with committee of practices, for instance, spread across the organization. So you want to probably install a dual hybrid data functions with a central part and with a more, let's say, a decentralized part. And how you can do that efficiently. So I had also different ways of doing it, depend on the maturity of the company, depend also how things are set up originally when the data function is decided. So there's a lot of flexibility, but one model that I've seen working pretty well is first you need to establish all the standards. So you need to establish the right technological infrastructure and take decisions that are probably easier to make centrally. So you may want to start with a central function, but then already very early identify in the different business units stakeholders with whom you can really start working very closely and basically spread the knowledge. That may not be the most important or the highest priority business cases that you could see in your organization there, but you need to choose the team or the business units where you feel that they have the more maturity into this evolution towards this end goal of data enablement. So you need to work with people that are already working in this direction and ready, and use them as a lighthouse case for the entire organization. When we have a couple of proof of concept or MVPs ongoing, you want to start working with other business units, so spread it even more, train people in other business units, or even starting moving away some of your people into the decentralized way, if it's the way it works for this organization. And by the time that you have fully decentralized and work with everyone, you can have this dual setup. I just talked hybrid setup. I just talked a bit before, with a central team that is more or less responsible then to the common data platform and to the common, let's say, understanding or conventions and practices, best practices to spread. Maybe also with your training center for the entire organization. But then the essential part of your data people spread in the different business units, because this is where they bring value directly. All right, so that's it. I think I did quite okay with time. Let me check. Yes, look okay. I'm available for any question you may have right now. Feel free just to ask or reach out to me. You can find me on LinkedIn or throughout the list of the Data Festival. Again, it's been a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to miss the parties though, but I'm sure Julie and the team will have something to thought about for that. Take care, stay safe, and talk to you soon.